Awesome. Welcome, everyone. Happy March. It's like spring is on the horizon. I feel like this is always a New England milestone when we hit March 1. So happy spring on the horizon. My name's Kim Allardyce. I'm the Executive Director for Naturally New England. We are a new chapter for Naturally Network, which is a nationwide nonprofit organization working to support early stage founders and even emerging brands as well. We work to bring together founders, retailers, investors, various service providers through networking opportunities, educational content, and events like this. So today we have a very experienced panel on both selling into retail as well as procurement for retail. I'm going to let everybody to my left introduce themselves, and then we'll get underway.
My name is Dave Plazik. I work for Big Y Foods. We are a supermarket chain based out of Springfield, Mass., and we cover Massachusetts and Connecticut with a total of 75 supermarkets, 18 convenience locations, and 1 specialty table and vine division. I've been with the company 27 years. I am the sales director in Center Store and officially of the frozen food, dairy, HBC, GM, specialty organic, and convenience store division, and yes, that is the longest title in the company. I've done some similar events like this in the past. It's a lot of fun, and hopefully you get a lot of value out of this, and we answer all of your questions.
My name is Jamal Robinson. I am the Director of Sales and Marketing for New England Brewing Company. We are based in Woodbridge, Connecticut. We are the 3rd largest brewery in the state, producing about 20,000 barrels a year, somewhere in the 200,000 cases. And we distribute mostly in Connecticut now, and we do like little pop-ups and splashes in some outside states, New York, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island.
Hi, my name is Marla Tremsky, and I work for Bozzuto's. We are a wholesale food distribution company. Bozzuto's has been in business for 80 years. I've been with the company about a year and a half. My role is kind of a hybrid between procurement and retail development. We distribute from Maine to Maryland. One of our areas of expertise is we really take care of the independent grocer. Previously, I've always been on the side of the retailer. I've worked for such brands as Whole Foods Market, Dean and DeLuca, Italy, and I'm really happy to be here today and looking forward to hearing from everyone. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Eric Nielsen from Geisler Supermarkets. We have 7 grocery stores in Connecticut and Mass and 1 Fitzgerald store, so we're actually 8 stores now. I am one of the 4th generation owners of Geisler Supermarkets. Technically, I'm the director of operations right now, so making sure that all the products and everything going on in the store is done right. I spent 5 years in a buying role before this, and just excited to be here.
Awesome. So on the brand side, founders are often navigating their way through this industry blindly. It's a bit of an adventure for anybody who's stepping into the space of creating a product and perhaps navigating the business landscape for the first time. I think there's a lot of learnings that occur, but probably the largest learnings are from the mistakes that are made. And can each of you share what are the larger mistakes that you've seen new or emerging brands make when pitching to retailers?
That's a great question. The biggest one that always pops up to me is having a strong understanding of the category that you're going in and where you might fit in the grocery store. You will see categories in multiple locations in a grocery store, but what I've always encouraged brands to do, or I've always been impressed by brands to do, are brands that have walked my store, they've looked at the category that they're in, and they fully understand what they're up against as far as competition. Some categories, if they're on trend, can be saturated with a lot of competition. So knowing what makes them different is a key piece to impressing me when I'm evaluating a brand. And that could be everything from your packaging, your story, your pricing. There's a lot of different things that you have to understand how you compare versus other brands in the set. So I have had brands in the past come in and they hadn't done that, and I think that puts them at a disadvantage.
Sure. Yeah, I'd agree with all that. I've seen that happen on my side and made some of those mistakes as a younger sales rep. But one of the biggest things I see is actually not being prepared for that meeting, right? Not going into the meeting having a distribution strategy and a go-to-market strategy, not having pricing structured and consistent between different wholesale partners. If you have a wholesaler that's in Hartford versus a wholesaler that's in Fairfield, making sure that the pricing that they're going to the grocery store to the store is the same so that we can have blanket pricing across the state. And then having UPCs and distribution set up properly so that when it's time to push go, the store has everything they need to authorize and turn that brand on.
Right. Yeah. Well said. And, you know, you got to be retail ready, right? So some of that was said, your packaging, your regulations, in terms of having a registered barcode, a UPC, those are all things that are very important to retailers. So they have a way of tracking and onboarding your product. And then, you know, what is unique about your product? You know, what is your differentiator? Why am I going to buy your brownies over the other 100 brownies that are already on the shelf? And really knowing that, and not only knowing it, you know, like being able to articulate it, being able to pitch and sell that. People buy products because of, you know, the story and how the products make them feel. So that has to be, there's so much work to be ready to go to market. It's so hard. So, you know, in terms of getting everything logistically organized and then also being able to have that like touchy-feely part of your product is essential to differentiate yourself.
Yeah, so I'm thinking about this, and you're saying barcodes and stuff, and I remember a person came up to pitch their product, and they came in, and they had this great new product, and they didn't have a barcode. And I said, okay, well, just when you print your next labels, and their face dropped. And they had printed 10,000 labels. So sometimes it's before you fully commit to everything, like start the process slow so that you can learn, because we're all going to make mistakes, but you know, lean in and work with your retail partners and learn from everybody. So sometimes it's the overcommitment of stuff. I've just talked somebody out of buying a van before they've sold their first product. I said, well, why don't we deliver in your car first before we buy a delivery van? So the overcommitting to things that can get you into financial trouble really is something that does happen out there, especially as you're trying to grow a brand from like the farmer's market to the grocery store.
Very great points. And along the lines of labels and ordering 10,000 of them, what factors, label included, make the brand stand out on the shelf and increase the likelihood of success for their retail launch? And anybody can begin.
I'll go. The first one that always pops in my mind, and every time I go to a food show, and I've been to food shows with 2,000 vendors, and I do a walk and I scan packaging. You have to get your packaging right, and that it is such an essential component because you have 10 seconds to sell somebody. They have pasta sauce, hot sauce on their list. They're going to the shelf. There's a sea of them. Packaging, something that is eye-catching, something that is clean, that calls out the attributes that are important to the customer that they're looking for. If it's a high-protein item, it calls that out. Those are key areas. Combined with price and honestly, a sale tag. You're going to want to promote regularly. Sale tag does a lot, but pricing compare, customer's going to evaluate that and make that decision very quickly.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with all of that. I think just in addition it's one thing to get a brand on the shelf and do all the right things from a packaging, from a pricing standpoint. But then there has to be some sort of a strategy to support that brand outside of the shelf, right? Outside of relying on just someone to see your brand in a sea of other brands and then be that. What is the marketing support behind that product? What are the other things that you're doing from a sampling opportunity, from presentation to getting in front of a consumer in other ways outside of just having the product on the shelf? Because it's a two-pronged approach every time.
Yeah, I think part of a successful retail launch, obviously we're all talking about packaging, and you know, if you had some beautiful product that you're absolutely in love with, you're so excited that you're ready to go to market, you know, you're not going to just put it in a paper bag, you know? I mean, like, you want it to show up on the shelf looking sexy. You want it to show up on the shelf to stand out. So packaging is essential. And then also, in today's world, people attach themselves to sustainability or to, whatever part of that message is. But also speaking about a successful retail launch, definitely having your go-to-market marketing strategy ready. Social media, a wonderful, kind of free channel that, many, many people today, especially our younger generation, they don't go to Google to look up a product. They go right to Instagram. They go right to social media to see, how many likes it has, what other celebrities are following it, who else is following it. So having a strong social strategy, I think, is essential to a retail launch. Yeah.
Yeah, to go back onto the packaging, I think making sure that it has the right things on the front, because you don't get the chance to have that customer pick it up and look around the whole package. Whereas I'll use the example of farmer's market is a more intimate setting where you're selling somebody, you have the time face to face. In the grocery store, you have a few seconds to make that person's decision. So the marketing beforehand, that helps them before they get into the aisle, but when they get there, they have to be able to identify it and identify what makes your product unique. So,
and to piggyback, Marla, on what you just said about social validation, when you are evaluating products to onboard, or your team is evaluating products to onboard, is cross-checking social handles and looking at their social presence part of your kind of behind-the-scenes review process?
I don't know if I would say globally it's a company initiative, but I definitely think some of our category managers subscribe to that philosophy. I subscribe to that philosophy. And I think, the consumer definitely subscribes to that philosophy.
Great. And so, when everybody's starting out, all of the founders, really, everybody begins with 0 followers, right? So it's, everyone starts from scratch. So what, Eric, do you look for when you're reviewing social proof online? Are you looking at reviews? Are you looking at the quality of the content? What are some KPIs, if you will, when you're skimming somebody's social media? Is it just follower count, or are there qualities there that you're kind of reading for?
I guess you want to see some interaction on it, but I can't say that I make the decision just on that, because I know that I just got pitched an energy drink that got released last night, and I already talked about bringing it in and trying it, and they had yet to sell 1 can of it. So you don't always need the proof, but as you get bigger, you do. But we try to work with it. But when you're looking at social media, you want to also see, besides likes, is there other interaction? Is it the same 5 people that are interacting? Is it, they're getting new people? Like, what's going on with it? So.
Great. And David, on your end, what else are you looking at behind the scenes besides, let's say, checking social media? Like, what else do you go out looking for after you've been pitched a product?
If it is something that is an emerging trend or a new trend, I'm always looking for what they're competing against. I will also look at what my competition's doing. I'll look sometimes I have to go to the store and refresh my memory as what it looks like in store where they're going to go. And again, like I had said, some brands can end up in a different location in the store than they might originally anticipate. But social media is a big one. If don't have a presence, do they have a plan? That's a key piece too. Just having a plan that they're going to, utilize social media. But those are the areas that I would look at.
Great. And Jamal, when you're getting ready to pitch, what information from your business are you harvesting to kind of put forward for your best presentation?
Yeah, I think it's always important for a supplier to also be a category resource, right? And to be very knowledgeable about what's happening in the category as a whole in that part of the industry. So we look at Nielsen and IRI data at what emerging trends are. I spent a lot of time studying and building stories around different categories and different kinds of products, whether we're going to launch a new session IPA or a new double IPA or a new format, like if we're going to go into 19.2s or 16-ounce cans, and find trends that support that kind of a decision. So instead of just making something because we think it sounds right, it's about making sure that it is relevant to the buyers that we're going for, it's relevant to the category, that there's enough data to support that trend so that when we're pitching that product, we're not just pitching this specific product, we're actually being a knowledgeable resource about what is on the come up why our brand fits into that category and what are the data that supports why this will meet the hurdle rate to be a valuable asset in that store and on that shelf. Because every shelf, especially when you look at the beer section in most grocery stores, especially, it's a very small section. So it's important to have things that are going to be very relevant, because if they're going to put you in, they're going to take something else out, and you probably don't have the opportunity to get all of our products that we want in. So we have to be very strategic about the ones we pitch. They're going to make the most sense and actually meet the hurdle rate that's necessary, so the next time we come back to the table, there's a certain amount of trust and relationship that's built there, because we haven't wasted anyone's time as much as we can.
Yeah, that's really great feedback. I think every brand out there needs a you. And along those lines, I mean, most founders are kind of fending for themselves. And so there isn't, when you talk about go-to-market strategy or big marketing plans, some of them are like ripping out their hair trying to just like Google the definition of these things and how do I tackle it? What's the first step? Eric, I love that you said that you took a chance on a brand that hadn't sold a single can. And I feel like this is this is one of the kind of cutting edge benefits of working with retailers versus direct to consumers, that you really can test in your backyard. What are some of the key attributes to somebody being able to pitch to you, let's test this product here? What would make you say, okay?
I mean, the first thing is taste, right? If I like it, if I can get a couple people around our office that try it and they like it, like, we're going to go for it, and so we may not need the proof from everybody else, and we'll take a chance on somebody small, because we know that we can work with somebody local and help build that. And that actually helps us, because when we want a sample, we know that those people are there to help support their brand, and they're going to sample it for them. So taste is the first thing. Packaging helps, but taste is the number one thing. And just
Awesome. And Dave, I'm sorry, I called you David earlier. I didn't mean to do that. But Dave, I know that Big Y takes a really strong stance on supporting local and regional brands, having been on the brand side before and walking the trenches with founders. And also Big Y is one of our local stores that we shop at. We see a strong set with local products. How do you evaluate whether or not you're going to take a chance on something that is local but perhaps relevant to test out in the store?
We do a little bit of what Eric said. Certainly taste the product, pass it around, hand out samples, and get some internal feedback. But we also engage the stores. So if you're a local product and you're going to go into your hometown store, we're going to engage the store and see what they think. Is this something that they believe would be add value to their stores? And we often introduce the brand to the store director themselves, so they can build a relationship there as well. And that's been one of, I think, the strongest areas for us as far as growing our local business.
Great. And Marla, for your team, because you service from Maine down to Maryland on the distribution side, working with a lot of larger retailers as well as independents, is there somebody specific within your team, not to hand out the contact information, but do you have somebody within your team that really works on kind of forging the relationships with the smaller brands that are kind of emerging and maybe just testing out distribution for the first time or stepping into distribution for the first time? Is there a subset of your team, or how do you manage that internally?
Yeah, sure. Great question. We do work with a kind of an endless aisle concept. So it's a SFP, and it's a way for customers of Bozzuto's to have access to thousands of brands that are out there. And it's kind of a direct drop ship. So that's like a great way to begin your distribution relationship. Whereas, and therefore it's a much smaller commitment. It's a way to have access to all of the customers that we do business with. So, the endless aisle concept is one great way. And then, when you say, are there any specific, people within our organization that do that? I think that, we're such a big, broad organization, all of the categories and titles that fall under Dave's, work. We have that plus more. So I think that the category managers that we have are really out there doing great work within their specific category. And, and even within that kind of position, there's, a junior, a senior category manager. So I think that the category managers really do a great job of understanding what's out there and what's specific to their category. Yeah.
And Jamal, I know when you joined the company, were they positioned with distribution, pricing, and strategy already, or did you help them forge kind of how to look at their pricing to make sure that you could effectively work with distribution without tanking the business from a margin perspective?
Yeah, New England was a very established brand. It's been around for 22 years now. I've been with the team for 6 years. But a part of launching new brands and taking price increase, for instance, is one of the things that a lot of market analysis. My sales guys that are on the road are my eyes and ears out there and seeing what's happening in the trade, what's happening in terms of pricing, where people are being positioned, what's shifting, what categories are making sense. So when we look at new strategies, or when we're taking price increase, to make sure that we're falling in a place that we're not outpricing our competition, we're not above what's expected, that we're falling in line with what customer trends are, what retailers are seeing from other categories. There's never been as much disruption in the beverage scene as there is right now. So making sure that we have all our ducks in a row and have as much information as possible is pretty vital.
Great. Amazing. What are the best ways for brands to get through to you guys and or decision makers within your team? Like, do you respond to cold calls, or rogue emails that land in your inbox, or is there a relationship development component in terms of showing up in store, or where or how do people find you? What's the most effective way to get through to somebody in your team who's actually in charge of making decisions?
I love this question. I would advocate to not do email. Personally, sales managers are inundated with a lot, and there's a lot of communications that flow through there. And it's very difficult, in my opinion, to get a proper pitch through email. As far as we go with our local vendors, a lot of them go into our stores, or they shop in that store, but they go in and they introduce themselves to the store manager, and the store manager then shares it with us. So we get a lot of recommendations from our store teams. That's one of the ways that we find a lot of the local folks.
Great. Jamal, do you have a perspective on this from the brand side?
Yeah, absolutely. When you get that actual meeting with a buyer and say things go great and it's authorized, you still have to get in at the store level to make those relationships with the individual buyers. But with other brands that are less established that I've worked for prior to New England, we piggyback right on the wholesaler that already has relationships. So, for instance, if we're with a wholesaler that sells a lot of Anheuser-Busch products, they're already selling Budweiser and things to the store. So they understand how the buyers think. They get meetings set up for some of their other packages. And that's kind of the value of having a distributor partner, is being able to kind of piggyback on some of those and kind of get your way into those meetings on the direct level and get introductions directly through the wholesaler network.
Amazing. Marla?
Yeah, I think, simply saying, show up. I understand that like food shows and things like that can have a high cost associated with them. So that might be a challenge, but any opportunity where you have to expose your brand, show up like with your best. We have a great example out here today where there are brands out there, sampling their wares. So you want to show up, you want to look great, you want to have, like presentation is everything. So I think showing up in a store and talking to people with their boots on the ground. And again, show up there, look smart, look sharp, have your product looking sharp, and, be there great. That's, I think, so important wherever you and your brand can be.
It's a really good point.
Yeah. So, similar, we have people that show up at our stores. Our office is right next to one of our stores. So some people come in, and there's actually somebody that's demoing today that cold called me, and we played phone tag, I think, for 2 months. And I finally had to give my cell phone to them because I said, listen, I'm not trying to dodge you. I just have yet to connect with you. So sometimes you just got to keep going and don't give up, and you can get there. So we're real people, but the email thing, I think I'm around 200 to 300 emails a day, so I will miss it. And same thing with the phone. Sometimes I'm on the road, so I don't always get to my office voicemail, and it's been going into the store is a very good thing, and then those are the people that are going to continue to reorder it. So making sure that you have that establishment with them so that they stay on top of it, that's what's really going to work.
Yeah, email does seem to be a death trap. It's like, but I think repetition also counts, right? So you see an email in your inbox and maybe you haven't had a chance to respond to it. And by the way, for all the founders out there, like no response isn't a no. And then they follow up with a phone call or that you meet them in person. All of that, those kind of stacked interactions start to help in terms of recognizing the person's name or the brand, right? After you've established a relationship with this brand, they're onboarded. What key aspects of the relationship help to drive long-term success? Is it purely sales? Is it purely turns? Or is there also a relationship dynamic at play as well? What's your perspective on that? And let's start down at the other end, Eric, this time.
I'd say that the relationship helps, right? And that's, we want to turn the product, but we know that it's not going to always happen instantly. So having that communication back to say, hey, can we try a sale? Can we try demoing it? Can we try something else? And being able to stay in it long enough, because if you give up on your product, it's easy for somebody else to give up on their product. And I know the people working in our stores, they have so many items that they're thinking about that they're not as passionate about that product as you are. And it's not their fault. It's just they have so many things they're thinking about. But if you can make that connection with them and stay up on it and, work with them, they're going to work with you because they want to see it succeed. They're just worried about some other stuff also. So, don't give up. And just because the first try didn't work doesn't mean you can't change something and make it work.
Great point. When we'll go in the reverse, let's come back this way, Marla. Opposite what I told you guys earlier. Sorry.
So me?
Rule breaker. No, we're going to go to Marla next.
Yeah, look, sales are key, right? Like all of us here, whatever it is we do, we're not doing it for free and for fun. We're doing it for, so sales are definitely important, but, the relationship. Yeah, people do business with people. They don't do business with brands. So, kind of almost going back to how you show up. I also can't echo enough how important demos are. And same thing, don't have someone you wouldn't want representing your brand, right? Like we've seen that unfortunately happen because we can't be everywhere. So, I think demos really solidify the opportunity. And I think, the communication, like, is there anything we could do better? Is there something that you would like to see from us that you're not seeing? So the relationship is so important, and timing of the relationship is too. If you think about somebody who's got their boots on the ground and is a buyer, you're one of many. So perhaps they can't answer all of your questions all of the time and on your timeline, but keeping the relationship and the communication open, being open to feedback, understanding what you can do better, and, being really flexible, like brands need the retailer and or the distributor. So how can you show up? How can you make it as easy as possible for them to represent your brand, whether it's on the shelf, whether it's in the warehouse? And again, to just like echo to any founder that's here, we've seen it a million times when a product can get demoed and demoed in the right way at the right time, it's a game changer. And it might not even be a game changer right then, but down the line, it's a game changer. So, yeah.
Yeah, the relationship's vital, and having the relationship with all the necessary parts, not just the buyer, but the buyer at the store, the person that stocked the shelves, the person that maybe is at the register. Like most of finding different people to actually connect with and connect with your brand outside of just the person that's in charge of putting it on the shelf is important, because at some point, all of those people may or may not be a salesman for you in that store. And we see the same thing with bars and restaurants when we get into a bar and it's the bartender. It's not just like buying in with the owner of the store. It's the bartender who's the one who's actually serving customers most of the time. So building relationships with all the people that are connected and touching your brand. And then can't stress enough, being a resource, being knowledgeable and being an expert on the category and on your part of the industry so that you can offer more than just selling your product. You can offer information and be of value that you can now follow through on that relationship, and then follow through and then follow up, making sure to build those connections, not just waiting till your brand doesn't meet the hurdle rate, but when you're actually doing well, what else can you do? Making those connections again and continuing to be consistent And again, like she said, you're building relationships with people. Like these are real people. And just like you'd build a relationship with a friend or someone else, you want to make some of those connections to make something authentic and make the relationship authentic.
What they said. Some really great answers in there. I think the one thing I would throw in too is just, so you're going to have your main point of contact when you get into a store, probably be a category manager and then also the store team. So building that relationship comes also with a regular cadence of communication. Whether it's a monthly check-in, and it's an email. Many times when I was a category manager and I would get an email from a local brand or smaller brand or emerging brand that would say, hey, just checking in, seeing how everything's going. If you need anything from me, sales look good, that sort of thing, usually elicited a response. That's an easy one. And it might even, in the world of a category manager has 4,000 SKUs or something, at least in Center Store, it might get them to take a quick look and just say, oh yeah, hey, sales looking good. Have gotten positive feedback from the stores, that sort of thing. So regular cadence of communication is good. Touch and base both with, the store team that you've built a relationship with and then also the category manager.
Really great feedback and thoughts. I'm glad you didn't skip out on that one. Marla, you mentioned demos, and I think one of my favorite advisors, he was always very, he just always hammered in, like, win in your backyard, do store checks, show up, many things that you guys said here. Demos being a really important aspect of product discovery and consumer education. Are there any just quick tips or tricks that you would offer for how to navigate effectively getting demos off the ground for the first time for anybody who's kind of like, I'm a solo entrepreneur and I have no resources other than my 2 feet and my car? What are the first steps from your perspective?
I think one, if it's just you and you have your 2 feet in your car, are you able to work with somebody on the store level? And, listen, you're actually then asking somebody who doesn't work for your organization to work for your organization. But there's probably a lot of retailers that would welcome this opportunity. So, being able to offer the retailer free product so someone else can do that job for you. Being ready with talking points. If there's 3 things you want me to know about your product, what are they? Keep it simple. And, people like swag. So, like, I get it. If you don't have a lot of money, you can't make hats and t-shirts, but can you have a really cool sticker that, like, has your brand and says something that somebody's going to want to put on their laptop or put on their water bottle? So I think, again, how can you get me to remember your brand? So I think keeping it simple, having 3 specific talking points, having plentiful product available that you can offer, to the retailer to do that work for you. And, like getting a brand from your test kitchen to the shelves of a retailer, like it's a lot of work. So yeah, if you're a founder, and I'm sure if I'm speaking to you right now, like you're going to be tired. You're going to be working a lot. You are going to be schlepping stuff in the trunk of your car and, but like it's a labor of love. And like, this is what it looks like now. It's not what it always will look like. Yeah.
I mean, I think it looks like that for a long time. Yeah. A lot of founders are like, I left my 9 to 5 to work 24/7, so, along those lines, how many founders are in the room? How many of you are actually founders? I should have done this in the beginning. Great. We have 7 minutes left. Are there any questions that you guys have that we can sneak into the mix here? Yeah, you in the back in the white.
Yes, I'm Chef Kay. I'm a producer of beverages from ginger with turmeric, the best. I go to ShopRites, the food bazaars. But I tried to get into Big Y. I went to one of the local stores and said, hey, you have to go to headquarters. So I emailed headquarters through LinkedIn, through everything. And I realized how email doesn't work. Because John Lawson from Whole Foods says, hey, I didn't see your email. I said, hey, here it is. Yeah. And he said, oh, this is it. So I said, how can I actually get to you guys? I have a very good product. I was at the Big E. I do stores from New York, New Jersey. I'm Connecticut here. I'm based in Waterbury. That's where my factory is. But I came from price as higher. Range meat is a mess.
Range me is.
Well, we appreciate the feedback on Range Me. And we do utilize that. So I have the easiest solution for you. If you have a card, you can give it to me or somebody else from our team, and we'll get it in front of the appropriate buyer
Let's get
for
this
you.
done now. Do you have a card? Can you bring
Done.
it? Can you bring it down?
Not to say that this is the only method for doing
Let's
this.
get this. Let's actually
But-
make this happen. Do you want to bring a card down now?
Bring
and I'll
it,
give
bring it
to
on
him?
down. Happy to
Yeah,
take it.
like let's get it done. We got this. All right. Any other founders in the room that have questions? Yes, gentleman in the black.
How do you think of new trends? Are there any new trends that you are really liking in particular? Aside from that, in particular, what do you think about the GLP-1 consumers? It seems there's about 30 million by 2029. Do you look at products, in that lens as well? So kind of two parts.
I can start.
Anyone? Yeah, trends.
It's a great question. The interesting thing about GLP-1 is there's a lot of emerging health trends that just align with it. So high protein items has probably been one of the biggest on trend. Low calorie, zero sugar, those are the types of things. So you can, right now, the biggest emerging trends align with the GLP-1. I'll go sit down. So yeah, it's very interesting. We're always, you have to, it's such a dynamic industry. We're always looking for what is the next trend. We attend trade shows. We look at news reports. We follow social media. We do everything we can to stay on top of what the biggest trends are.
And one of those trends that aligns with it is fiber. We're seeing a lot of products out there with fiber. Are there any other comments from anyone else, just particularly on fiber? I'd love to hear. Thank you.
Shall we assume you have a product with fiber in it?
Well, our products are
I like
actually
the covert.
yes, our products are in Big Y. So I'm Alexander. Our product is called Perfect Pita Chips. The motto is finally a new pita chip. And we are low carb, high fiber. And we have found that, and we launched last year, we have found early with some consumers, they wrote into us who wear glucose monitors and are on these drugs. Were asking about this and told us, hey, it doesn't spike our blood sugar. This is a great snack. So for me, as a founder, it's like, hey, when I'm meeting with buyers, when I'm meeting with distributors and investors, is this something I should lean into a little bit more, especially if folks, like you are looking at these new products in a larger consumer base. So yes, I do make a product.
Great. So any thoughts on fiber trends?
I can't say I'm knowledgeable about it yet, but I would definitely lean into it because it is something that I've heard talked about in our office. And, I made the joke the other day that I am glad I'm not buying too many categories because I don't have to figure out as many trends anymore. So, yeah.
And wellness better for you. It's sweeping the nation. It's,
Yeah.
that messaging is coming from more than just, specialty food shows. But so anything that can resonate and attach itself to that is, definitely a big trend right now.
Good. And Dave has something
I would
to add to
lean
that,
into
then
it, and
I'll
I would
get to
use
you.
the word prebiotic. That's the buzzword.
Good. Thank you. Great feedback. Matt in the red. Yeah, what's your question, friend?
So my name is Matt Browning. We're founder of We Charcuterie Salami. Thank you. We're in Big Y's, all the Connecticut Big Y's. Thank you. We love working with you guys and your support of local. Some of the things I've heard, so the demo piece, we really leaned in hard on the demo piece from September till the Super Bowl, basically. And what a difference. It was just quite remarkable. The response, our repeat orders, our customer base, everything skyrocketed. But you mentioned sales. How do you organize and work with a retailer to be part of one of their sale items or a flyer or a holiday special? I mean, we make charcuterie, so we're good for a dozen of the holidays through the year, but never have had a sale been a featured item in a sale. How does that work?
Let me start with that. So there could be a whole session on sales and promotions and strategy and how to manage it. But any quick tips on this? Because there's typically like a packet that you complete for each major retailer and you submit. But you internally have to air traffic control then what you have on promotion, where, when, and how. It's a lot of paperwork. You have to also monitor the effectiveness of it, how much lift in sales you're seeing from them so that you know whether or not you want to sign up for them again. There are often fees associated as well with many of the retailers. Some of them will give you discount promotions if you negotiate with them. But it's pretty intricate and it can be a lot to manage. So when you are a founder that's managing all aspects of the business, I often see this one kind of get picked up on the uptake last because it's quite dense.
I'll
tips,
quickly
tricks?
address that. I mean, when you're going DSD with a product, it is up to you, and just another one of the things on your to-do list, and it might be a challenge to make it into a flyer, into something like other than just being on the shelf. But when you work with distribution, that is usually part of the agreement in terms of promotions. And then again, there's, is it an off invoice? Is it a bill back? Is it a rebate? And, getting back to it's hard. There's a lot to do. There's a lot to learn. But when you work with a distributor, promotions are part of your agreement.
Yeah, and distribution specifically, there's usually requirements before you onboard with them and how you have to engage. But working with the stores directly, you can often decide kind of what works. And again, with them looking for turns and looking for movement, if you're seeing stagnation in any of your retailers, you can look, that's one option you can look at to see how you can drive turns.
Marla, you mentioned 3 ways that comes back. Bill back, there was 2 others.
Bill back, rebate, and off invoice. I'd be happy to tell you after the definitions of each of those terms.
And Marla, or actually anyone here, does the distributor or retailer have a preference on off invoice or MCB?
I think I won't speak for a retailer, but in my retailer experience and currently, I think off invoice is the preferred method. Like who doesn't want the deal now as opposed to more paperwork later?
Yeah. And so just, for the founders in the room also, like the off invoice does serve the purposes of the retailer and the distributor in that they can kind of stock up at a discount and then sell it really at any cadence that they move it. So you really do have to decide for yourself and your business if off invoice also serves and supports your business model. I think that's just one thing to be, mindful of as you're navigating setting those up, because they could order 2 pallets of product at that invoice or at that off invoice price. And that's a very good deal for them if they sell it for, depending on the shelf life of your product, just to play both sides of the conversation here, like you really do have to look at what serves your business needs so that you're not tanking your margins, because often the margins are very tight. So that off invoice discount matters. Yeah. So we are over time by 2 minutes. I'm sorry for extending the time here. But thank you so much for our panelists' insights, wisdom, sharing the knowledge. I'm sure you're going to get a lot of emails after this for people trying to nail you down. But also they will be out walking the sampling area as well. Do feel free to ask additional questions. And thank you all for your time and, for sharing the experience with us.